Welcome to the Investment Banking Leaders Podcast, brought to you by the Investment Banking Leaders Club, your exclusive access to the industry's most successful leaders. These experts have closed thousands of deals, generating hundreds of billions of dollars, and they're here to share their strategies, insights, and leadership lessons that can fast-track your career. But the learning doesn't stop here. Join the Investment Banking Leaders Club at ibleadersclub.com for even more exclusive insights, leadership frameworks, and career accelerating resources and events. Thanks for joining us, and best of luck on your growth journey. I'm pumped to introduce today's guest, someone whose path into investment banking was anything but conventional and all the more inspiring for it. I'm joined by Philip Ross, the Vice Chairman at Jefferies, whose journey spans medical school, CPA exams, and a relentless drive to break into Wall Street, all without the Ivy League pedigree that often defines traditional banking careers. Philip is a client-centric banker known for his deep strategic relationships, long-term thinking, and a leadership philosophy that's built on humility, partnerships, and high standards. At JP Morgan and now Jefferies, he's built a reputation for thoughtful, senior-led advice and brings to every deal a commitment to fairness, selflessness, and client outcomes that transcend transactions. So I'm excited to get into it, Philip. Welcome to the Investment Banking Leaders Podcast, and thanks for joining me.
Thanks. The first for me, so I hope we have some fun.
I'm sure we will. As I mentioned, your path into investment banking was really unique. You were on your way to becoming a plastic surgeon before pivoting into finance. So what prompted that shift, and how did you actually land your first IB role?
It's funny you asked. I wanted to become a plastic surgeon. Still, I had to go through a general surgery residency. So that would have been the second step after that. But it's interesting. I never thought about investment banking to know what it was. If you asked me if I were a kid in medical school what that was, I'd say they invest in banks. I'd have no idea. But what happened with me, I did a dual degree with an MBA, and somehow a friend of someone in our family said, hey, before you do this, you have all this background. Maybe you should consider Wall Street. I go, what? And it just tumbled into me doing an informational interview, which turned into an offer and invest in equity research at one of the boutique banks in the old days, which I did not take. And then I ended up doing things that I thought were normal, like getting the Wall Street Journal and Barron's and starting to read about the world. And every time there was a doctor mentioned, I picked up the phone and I tried calling them. And every once in a while, I got through. But that didn't lead so far. And then ultimately, I met someone who said, hey, why don't you give this guy a call? It turned out to be someone at a bank that was very senior. I thought he was expecting my call. I was so relentless calling them, thinking that they were expecting my call. I didn't think they really were. They were just being nice. To the point where they said, why don't you come on in and interview? And that's how it started from there.
That's amazing. I love that grit and that hustle. Pick up the phone, cold calling, seeing doctors, putting yourself out there. What did that experience teach you about hustle, rejection? And would you still recommend that kind of persistence today?
We didn't have technology back then. I think it was like dial-up, T1 line, AOL, you've got mail days. So, back then, the good old-fashioned telephone actually had a lot more impact on your career than today, where you can DM someone through LinkedIn. You have tremendous amount of connectivity. You can go through an alumni network, which is all electronically captured and stored. So I would argue that the cold calling is actually already done through some other platforms today. I think the critical point is it's a human environment. And especially people my old age, we usually deal with interactions. I even tell my own kids texting and emailing is nice, but what's really important is human connectivity. So I know what it taught me about rejection is, and especially in this career, if anybody's interested and already in it and wants to keep moving forward, it's filled with rejection, but you have to define rejection. If rejection to you is only about doing a deal, then you're in the wrong business. That's the key. It's not about winning the deal. It's about working with great people across whatever ecosystem you're in, be it real estate, financial institutions, biotech and pharmaceuticals, insert name here. That's the cool part. So the rejection is how you define it. In terms of getting a job, yeah, you get rejected a lot. In my age, most people have one job in their career, maybe two. Is my second in my life. I've been told my kids are going to have 5 to 7 jobs. So it's a totally different and more, I would say, mobile environment today.
Yeah, for someone who's also only had 2, it definitely can relate to you. And it's true what you say about the human element. And I think that sometimes gets lost in investment banking. It's a really human business. So I love that. And I know when we chatted at the start, you said you felt a bit like a fish out of water at the beginning, surrounded by Ivy League bankers, and you'd obviously had no formal training. So how did you manage that early imposter syndrome, and how did you find your voice as a junior banker?
Yeah, sure. I knew my way around financial statements because I had my CPA, as you mentioned, got an MBA. So I could traffic in indirect and direct cash flows. If you're talking about like complex financial modeling, probably not as complex. The first way you deal with it is you just put your head down and start working. The second thing is always ask for help. And the third thing to do is look for mentors when you go along. No one's above any work. I used to say I'm an associate because I came in as an associate because I came out of graduate school. Analysts knew a lot more than I did. And we would just partner on work. I'd say, you check this, I'll check yours. We'll do each other's corrections. I think that's the most important thing, is just realizing what you do and do not know. The non-Ivy environment, the big issue for me was I had no network. I had no community. It was awkward. I did have a couple of people that I knew of that were physicians that, quote, defected into the world of finance, or they were in hedge funds, which back then was very irregular. When they were bankers, there were very few back then. Now it's a very commonplace thing to contemplate. Lawyers always go into finance, but doctors typically never do. So just trying to create a way to learn from people, I think, was the most important thing. And then just realizing what you do and do not know. A chip on your shoulder is not a bad thing, right? Not a negative chip, but like something that has you driving. And whether it's not that you feel less than, it's that you feel like you need to know more than, not to outpace someone, but just feel like you're always going to have an ability to basically provide your own support network by what you learn over time, not by who you are.
Yeah, I can definitely understand how that drive pushes you forward and gets you through it. And obviously you've done an incredible career, so it speaks volumes. Do you think that medical background, how has that medical background helped you in the roles that you've had?
I think personally, there's tremendously successful bankers in healthcare that aren't doctors. So let's just put that out there. In fact, it's a very, very large, vast majority of bankers in healthcare aren't doctors. And yes, some have studied chemistry in undergrad or biology, but didn't go through a full formal training program. So the point is, you could be successful in anything, whether or not you have a domain expertise in, say, the underlying biology. What I find is I just love science. I love to learn. I love content. It doesn't make you a good or less good or great banker. But what it does do, at least for me, I think the devil's in the details. And the more I can learn and apply over time and actually watch how things evolve over time, over 30 years, I've seen things in science that were really important 25 years ago that actually don't even matter today, right? So it's fun to do that. So I think it's a content-driven environment. The other thing I really like about it is I find that when I started in my career and as things evolved for me individually, I was able to use that scientific application to have conversations with organizations that in those days weren't as advanced in terms of the business development function in science. They were inputted into the deal in terms of like how they worked with R&D or manufacturing or commercial, but it was fun to be able to interact with actually heads of R&D at a point in time where things weren't as, I would say, as industrialized as they are today.
Yeah, how it's evolved must be so interesting across the arc of your career. And as you say,
all our clients and all the investors and my peers, it's great to just watch it all happen over time.
Some great journeys, I'm sure. And let's talk about clients a little bit. Client-centric thinking and building trust. Like when we caught up, that's what I really took away from it. And I loved your thinking there. So you're known for being deeply client-focused and stripping out internal, external noise to be fully present. Can you walk us through your client philosophy and what makes a great banker in your eyes?
I can tell you what I do. I think there's a lot of great bankers that have their own styles out there as well. What I like to do is I like to get my hands really dirty, roll up my sleeves and learn as much as I can. So I truly believe that senior focus should be everywhere. And by the way, whatever level someone's at, it's just really important to just get the content. One piece of advice someone gave me, and I started my career, is when you spread comps, if you know what those are, you go and you say, this company looks like this on a financial level. Read the actual 8 pages of the business section. Don't just go to the financials and plug them in, because once you read that and then you look at the output, you can say, this looks like this for this reason or not. Or maybe it looks so wildly off that maybe you actually made a mistake. So it's really important to think about that. But the way I approach clients is that's all I think about. I don't think about year end. I don't think about what's in it for me at the end of the day. Because if you take a continuum of a relationship, I think I discussed this with you when we had a call last week. I just look at this as an arc of 10 years. And deals are episodic. They happen. But if you only think about these episodic moments in time, you don't really have a long-term relationship with anyone. You're known as a honeymoon versus a marriage. What I like to do is have a long-term relationship with people. I think people are what drives execution, and follow them throughout their careers, and whether they're doing it for a long time in one place or as they move from place to place, and really understand how they're thinking about their business, and then apply what I know from the outside or think I know, and to give them the alternatives and take a view on how they should think about a particular, I'd say, fork in the road.
Yeah, nice. And you talked about taking a view and how that's important for great bankers. Show up even when the client doesn't need something as well. Have you got a particular story from many to share about where a long-term mindset has paid off for you?
I don't know if I'd call it a particular deal or story. Some of the most successful bankers give advice on the deal not to do, we always say. It's important to take a view which says it's not in it for me, what's in your best interest. But I do find that there's a couple schools of thought. Some folks like to present all of the alternatives and they let the client choose. And I did that for a period of time in my career, and I still think through all those alternatives. And that's what's great about being at Jefferies. We have all those alternatives to provide. I spend most of my time in the strategic world, but I love knowing that I can form capital and think about decision-making on, like I said, at least a 10-year arc. I just believe that taking a view is what is memorable. So a banker that has the ability to say, I believe this is the right path because of X, it doesn't mean that your client will agree with you, but they will remember you. And if it's well thought out, I've had situations where somebody said, would you do this deal? I said no. They hired someone else. They did it. They were very successful. They would have likely also been successful had they not done that transaction. But so I think it's really important to differentiate yourself, not in a competitive sense, but as an individual sense, by just having a view. And people will remember you for that. And it doesn't mean that you have to be controversial. It means you just have to be thoughtful to put that forth and hopefully explain yourself in a manner that allows the people or groups of people that you're talking to understand that view. And then when they'll reflect upon it, and it could be in 10 years, they'll say, oh my God, I remember when Phil said that in a meeting, and they'll say it to me. And I'm like, I don't remember that. But they said, thank you for taking a view. And I think that's good. And it's more stylistic. And it's as you get older in your career that you probably should think about how you form that.
Yeah, I love that. I've spoken to so many leaders, and you're the first one that showed up and said think about it on that 10-year scale and not the transaction in the moment.
It's a pretty boring job if you don't. It's a pretty boring.
Yeah, I can see why it's more exciting to have the content and think about the longer journey and really take the view on that. So yeah, thanks for sharing. Definitely gets a good sense. And I want to talk a bit about the thought leadership and how that shows up with the strategic advice. I know you're passionate about being a thought partner. That's already come through, not just a transactional banker. So how do you and your team build that kind of strategic value with clients?
Yeah, so I believe that if you're being called into a situation, that's completely different than saying, how do you track my company and help me think through things? For example, I've spent a lot of time with clients reviewing for years their quarterly releases or data releases specifically in my sector. How do you not pitch a story? You should never pitch a story. You should tell the facts, right? It's really important. But how do you present the story and the information to the public? That doesn't mean it's going to lead to something, but I love that part. I feel like it feels like you're out of the stands and on the field, so to speak, part of it in their journey, directly involved. So what we love to do is to get involved early on, but with no strings attached. So I never say, oh, if I do this for you, you have to do this for me. That's self-serving. We like to be selfless, client-centric, and that carries forward a long way. And then when they say, wow, wait, this big strategic question we're thinking about, what would you think? And now you've got all this history with individuals and boards and people that have seen you provide insight and advice along the way with no strings attached. That's the best relationship in the world because you don't want to feel transactional. You want to feel like you're a part of things. So I would say that is, to me, what I take a tremendous amount of pride in as well. That also should be the same for capital markets bankers, always providing people with a lens and a view of the market today related to the past, and hopefully crystal ball the future a little bit. And M&A bankers, the same thing as we think about the strategic stuff inside the company's needs and also the external environment's needs. There are moments in time which you'll find a lot more activity, whatever it's driven by geopolitical, financial policy, or corporate needs. That's important to make sure that clients that are just so laser focused on doing their job every day, which is really hard to do in its own, how can you not add value, but add insight, which I think is more important. And they'll determine the value of that insight.
Yeah,
I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it definitely gives me color and it makes a lot of sense. And I speak to a lot of VPs, directors, and I guess this is a really important point for them, right? About how they're thinking about their client relationships and how they're showing up. How do you coach them with this mindset of providing that strategy and showing up?
So I believe in any institution, you should utilize your internal resources for external impact. So the first thing no one has to be, quote, the person, right? I think it's a team approach. You can't be you can't come into a client with 15 people and expect to have a really good conversation. You can use 15 people in your office to get ready for it and think through it and analyze things. But so if there's senior resources that you find are impactful to you internally and have been mentors to you, and utilize them in the outward environment. So use that internal skill set externally. So that's one thing I would say. And then more importantly, don't make it about proving yourself in quote, winning a deal. It should be about, as you're building relationships externally, think about the long term. Don't think about your next promotion. Don't think about your next comp cycle. It's hard not to. It's the business we're in. It's a capitalist environment. But if you can put your mindset towards what do you want out of your job? You just want money. This is not the career. And you're miserable if you're watching this right now. You're a miserable person. You can't do it for money because, that also volatile, just like deals. I think it's about how you use the resources internally and externally to impact a client relationship. And then as you're building up, remember, every time you have an impression on a company or board, think about your average public company board in the US. Let's call it an 8-person board. Odds of board members being on 5 other companies. You're touching 40 companies at once if you speak to a board of directors. So remember how you conduct yourself. Those impressions carry with you in the future too. So if you utilize people and more importantly, prep those people, don't have them come in as senior air cover, get them in the dialogue, make sure that they're prepped. There are pitches I've done in the past where I've had 11 men in my old shop. I had 11 managing directors and vice chairman and chairman on a transaction. And I wrote a script. They can talk past each other. And we all wanted the common goal. And we all really cared about the client, but script them out, have pre-meetings, go through the deck, make sure everybody's prepped walking in that room. And then also say who's going to play MC in questions. Because people, undoubtedly, I'm sure you'll add tremendous value and give insights, but then they're going to query you around those insights and make sure someone just can MC it. Like you take that role and say, oh, please answer this. You don't have to answer everything yourself. You can play that role. And it also plays very well with management teams because they think you're a unified team, and it's the truth, working on their behalf.
I hope the aspiring leaders listening today, and there will be many, take note of that because I think it's great advice, right? Use that internal, external resources, be well prepared, show up, take a view across the period of time as we've talked about. And I love to take about having a board and actually you're in one meeting, but it's touching a lot of different relationships. No one's mentioned that to me, but it makes a lot of sense, right? That origination channel, if you will, that relationships means so much. So let me put you on the spot a little bit. When you think about the best strategic advice you've ever given or received, what comes to mind, Philip?
When I was younger and I would not over prep, but thoroughly prep for meetings, you can be a little excited in those meetings. And sometimes you're showing how much, and sometimes after a meeting, somebody say, but you're not the smartest person in the room and you don't need to be the smartest person in the room. You weren't trying to be the smartest, but you just were so prepared that you wanted to show that on behalf, and also you're trying to show that to the people that brought you there, especially when you're younger, like your colleagues are in the room and senior colleagues. And so it's all that your personal style that you develop over time. Guess what? Call that my biggest fault. It's fine. I learned from it. I move forward. And I have plenty more, and I'm not going to get into those on this podcast today. But that's the first thing is you don't have to, you can be super prepped, but know that it's all about the communication. That's one. What was the other part of the question that you wanted me to answer?
It was just the best strategic advice you've been given or received. What comes to mind?
So on a career growth perspective, that's that. The other thing was as you get older, utilize the senior resources. Stop worrying about internal politics and who takes credit. It's all about bettering a client relationship. There's too much time spent thinking of the things that don't matter. That's why I use the word client-centric.
Yeah.
Too many things. And then the last thing I would just say is managing on strategic advice. Don't be afraid to take a view, but don't take it flippantly. I guess at this stage of my career, there's a lot of great clients out there. A lot of them call me on weekends. They don't call about things that are not every day-to-day business. That's great. If a client's out there taking a run and they're giving you a call, that's a great thing. What do you think of this? I love that. So usually what I say is, I'm going to noodle on that. I'll get back to you in a couple hours with initial thoughts, and I'd like to schedule a meeting. Love that. So the best strategic advice you can give is more importantly say, I'm going to internalize that. Also tell people when you don't know something. You don't have to be an expert in everything, but you can say, that's a really interesting question. We're going to do the work and get back to you versus go down this kind of spiral of what could be's. I think it's important to say, and by the way, we should schedule that call tomorrow at 10 a.m., not a week. That's the other thing I would say. Follow-up's really important in client relationships.
Yeah, and quick follow-up. Is that your suggestion? Like always?
No, it just has to be thoughtful. You just want to show, A, that you're on top of things, and B, that it's important to you just like it's important to them.
I like the take on not rushing things. I think a lot of times, especially as a leader, people come to you and they expect answers and you're quick to give those answers and maybe you haven't thought about it enough. So I think that's a super important take. And yeah, I guess the enthusiasm of being so well prepared and being passionate about what the subject is, you can always
It
get into
happened
that.
25 years ago. I'll never forget, maybe 28 years ago.
Yeah.
I remember.
And I know Dominic well, and I think he's shared on the podcast about having two ears, and a lot of leaders talk about that, the listening aspect, which I know is key. Let's talk a little bit about culture, leadership at Jefferies. What makes the culture at Jefferies unique, particularly when it comes to senior attention, collaboration, and I know high standards is something you've spoken with me about.
Yeah, stepping back, I was at a prior employer, which I think the best of, and they had a tremendous culture, and then they had over 400,000 employees and globally, and amazing. Jefferies has also an amazing culture. What I love about it here, it's a relatively flat firm. So everyone has access to everyone. They give you the room to run. But more importantly, I love the people. And this is the way I am. I'm pretty, focused on this. If a partner calls, you call them back. And what I mean by that is if I text our CEO or email our CEO, I usually get a response within 10 minutes. It doesn't mean, and it's not like it's a mission critical thing. So you always have accessibility to these folks, or access to these folks. Same with our president, our colleagues who run investment banking, run M&A. The reason you want to get to them so fast is so not because you're trying to do something for yourself. You're trying to get a quick answer so that you can form an opinion to get back to a client in a timely fashion. It's not about, there is no bureaucracy at this firm. It's amazing. It takes a long time to get used to when you're not used to that kind of environment. In fact, to the point where you're confused at the outset. Dominic's been here a long time. I have not, but I find it incredibly refreshing and exciting and rewarding to be able to have this, meet all these new people I've never known in my life. And they're all great people in their own right and what they do and the functions that they serve at the bank.
I can understand when you're so client-centric, getting that speed and cutting out bureaucracy means so much, right? You actually get to do what you do best quicker. What about the standards? High standards. I think that's a really important topic for high-performing teams.
This bank, like any bank, is, I would call it, rigorous in terms of the work that's required. Very focused on work-life balance, incredibly focused on that. Physical health, mental health, all the things that are really important that we shouldn't lose sight of. And it's totally different than the investment banking model I probably grew up in 30 years ago. Doesn't mean the work isn't incredibly demanding. Doesn't mean it isn't incredibly complex. So the standards, at least for us, and it should be everywhere. When you're an analyst, I remember people, I think when I was interviewing, I interviewed someone that said, what's the definition of a great analyst? I said, error-free work. Your job's not to come up with the ideas or actually execute. It's actually error-free work. So you can get the analytics done to figure it out, ask great questions, do all that. And as you move up the curve, or move up in roles and experiences throughout the role, it expands more and more, both with internal and external responsibility. The reason for that is so that you can get a number of reps where you have so many things to reference in your head. No one's a genius. It's really like wisdom. You're looking back, you're pulling out a file drawer in your head and say, I remember this deal and exactly what happened there. How do I apply those learnings or avoid those situations in the future? So I think it's really important that the standards are really about training people, embracing people, teaching people, being open, being available, and being accessible to help others. That's what you do. That's the job. It's a people business. It's not an Excel business.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And I can understand why those coming through, they got the standard, but they got the support. That's a great combination, right, to succeed. So you touched on physical, mental. What's your view on commitment, especially as a leader today, where flexibility and burnout are like really hot topics?
Yeah, look, I think the difference when I did it, I'm not saying, it was harder when I did it. That's not my point. When I did it, there was none of these. You couldn't get work. I had a fax machine. I had at best a little, we called it like the Crackberry, the little one with the wheel, the original BlackBerry, because you're so addicted to it. Two-way pages. Like the technology didn't afford you the flexibility. Now, the problem with technology, though, it also means you're always on. Right. So you have to figure out how to break it. What I do when I'm at dinner on a personal level, Monday through Thursday, and my phone rings, I pick it up and I say, hi, everything okay? Great. It's a client, I'm saying. I'm just at dinner. Would you like me to step out, call you an hour, and call you in the morning? And the reason I do that is it's for my own self-preservation, because I'd rather just deal with it and get it done. And it's also during the week. And and by the way, if it's a weekend, it's super important. We'll do it too. But my point is, it takes your own temperature down. It takes the client's temperature down. And if it is mission critical, step out of the restaurant, deal with it, whatever. 99% of the time, you say, call me in the morning. So I just want to a lot of it is self-inflicted stress, and find your outlets. And whether it's exercise or whatever it is you like to do, or read or music or travel, and then take your time. If you have time off, take it off. I'm not the best. I don't adhere best to that rule, and then if you have to work for vacation, just do it. It's just easier instead of saying, oh, I might have to do this. Just go do what you have to do. And if you have to take some time to carve out, because we are in a client-driven business and deal with that, which is all high-class problems, if they're asking for your help, that's your job. So I would just say that finding your outlets that are important. Everyone has their own avenues for work-life balance, mental and physical health, but it's really important. Even if it's just taking a walk, it's important.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've got a really good morning routine, but yeah, the walk once you get into the day becomes that difficult part where you're stuck and one thing after another. But so I can definitely learn something there. And I like what you mentioned about setting the expectation. When someone calls you, we're very quick to get into it, but actually I like your strategy there about reducing the stress in the situation and setting yourself up for success. Great tip there.
It's just the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. You don't need to text. Just pick it up.
Yeah.
I didn't say people at the table don't roll their eyes at me every once in a while, but I think it's the right thing to do.
No one does voicemails these days, right? We remember the fax machines at Dealtoy. We used to fax designs, believe it or not. Things have changed a lot since the early days. When we talk about meritocracy and building high-performing teams, what do you look for in the next generation of leaders?
Yeah, the most important thing is identifying talent and giving them a platform. It doesn't mean you take an analyst to make a managing director, even though they can carry themselves in a very mature fashion. But what you can do is start to think about how those that don't have those qualities, how do you help them? I find, even if it's just, I like to bring people to meetings, not a ton of people. I think the biggest frustration I had during COVID was when everything was so virtual. And then, but your analysts would be on the screen they were in the boardrooms for every meeting. But they were also parallel processing and super busy. But I wonder how much they actually got out of that, because it's a very rare experience. Think about you're just out of college for a couple of years and you've been in every board meeting for the last 2 years or 18 months during COVID. So I don't know how many people really took that experience and internalized it and made it a skill set building function. But I do think it should be a meritocracy in terms of making sure that you give the opportunity to everyone to thrive, making sure that you make yourself accessible. It's hard. Making sure people show up, right, and are held accountable. That's important, because I think I think I said it to you last week, which is people only focus on the 3 to 5% of things they don't like. I don't think people that work for companies like Jefferies or my prior firm, or even the firm that you run, walk into work every day and say, hi, I want to thank you for the 95 to 97% of everything that goes really well in my life every day at your firm. And I think that's the hardest part of life is people. And so when you get constructive feedback, or let's call it transparent feedback, how do you internalize that and not remember that they're probably only giving the 3% or 5% of things that you need to potentially focus on right then? And maybe it's 10 or 15, doesn't matter. It's not 55% or 75%. So recognize that you're doing things well, but we can all get better. We can all learn. After every deal, I call a CEO and I say, hey, take a week, but I want you to think during this week, what could have gone better? What could I learn from this? What did I not provide you with that could have been more useful at what point? Sometimes it's nothing. Sometimes it's a blip. I love to hear that.
How do you build that within the team? Like you're clearly growth minded. You want that feedback. You want to hear it because you care about reaching that next level. And a lot of people do. I'm definitely like that, but not everyone does.
You're not. It's just part of the path.
Yeah.
So if you're a career banker and you want to be a career banker, expand your network outside your group. Identify role models that you think you want to emulate. I always say pick the things from bankers that you want and pick the things that you know you don't want in your style. Because you're going to be around a lot of people. And not everybody inside every organization loves each other. But I used to say, but I may not love that person, but boy, I can't wait. I love that they're on my side of the table when we're doing it. Like they're brilliant. I wish I could only be half as smart as some of these people, right? There's some amazing people out there. So identifying people that you interact with is really important in your career trajectory. Don't get caught up if you don't get promoted in a particular year. It's frustrating. It's disappointing. I personally went through it for a couple of years into the MD cycle. It could be a bank-related issue. It could be a group-related issue. It could be you blame it on bureaucracy and politics. I don't care what you blame it on. The point is, if you view this as a career and you do your job well, it will come. And if your life stumbles over a year or two, like the world's not going to end, it's really frustrating and disappointing and maybe hurtful. And maybe you say, how come that person got it and I did it. But that's not the end game. The end game, as I said, is this continuous 10-year arc of talking to great people in the ecosystem that aren't in your organization. That's the end for me. That's the end game for me in banking. Others may have a different, maybe somebody wants to run the bank, be all internally focused. But for me, it's always been about client relationships.
A purpose. It's so true though, right? You got the light at the end of the tunnel almost, that purpose that you're working towards no matter what happens and how many hours you have to work and how many things go right or wrong. You've got that purpose.
Look, there are things in life, you make choices when you do this job. But I was looking at it compared to doing a 12-year surgical program. So you put that in your head. The only difference is when you're a doctor, when you're off. When you're not on call, you're off. You are off. In banking, you're on. And there's people expecting to reply. What I do now, though, is when I get up early. It sounds like you do too. I love the fact that if I can do it, I try and clear all comments out first thing in the morning before I go to sleep at night or whatever, because I don't want to have an analyst ever waiting around or associate or a VP for my comments and stuff, because their day gets cluttered up. And then the vicious cycle keeps happening. They wait all day, then they get comments, they're up all night. But inevitably, in certain circumstances, that is the case because you're in this live situation where you're making, but then on regular way, hard work. I also have a rule. I like to send a book out the night before to a client before I even get on the plane. Let them look at it. It's not a false deadline. It's like, get it in their hands, and then you can have a conversation when you show up. But just by enacting that practice, you've now saved people's lives and helped them with their work-life balance. And then they're helping. I think that's a skill set everyone should have as well. But there's no right answer to your question because everybody has their own path and every organization's different. But everybody wants everybody to succeed. You don't get hired to an investment bank to fail. They always automatically think that you have some qualities in you, whether it be quantitative or qualitative, EQ or I, qualities that make you attractive to their specific banking culture to succeed.
What's your take on the book? You mentioned the book and getting it out early, getting it over to the client. Do you use the book these days, or is it more about you show up and it's more about the conversations that happen outside of that? I've heard.
I don't think anyone can be a superficial banker and be effective. Like, I think you have to have content. How you deliver that content is up to you. But again, books can be 3 pages stapled. They can be 150 pages. They can be 50 pages with a 40-page appendix, of which 10 is the meat. Because you got to remember, in an hour meeting or 90-minute meeting, it's not a lot of time, but you want to have the analytics to back it up. So I do believe in analytics. I do believe in books. I don't believe in them as I can't go to a meeting without a book. There's a lot, like X% of my interactions don't have books, but the book is the content. Like, it's packaged in a bow, and then that client can then reflect upon that. But that's why I like to send it the day before, because maybe you don't open it, but you had a full conversation about it. Oh, I remember in the materials you sent last night, this is where your thoughts. Can you walk me through that? Yeah. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to open one page and slide it in front of you at the same time.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Got it. And obviously the way you control the client message, the way you show up for your team, that has a lot to do with how their workload flows, as you just talked about. We've also talked about leaders being empathetic and selfless. You talked about recognizing the success, being there with the team. What does real leadership look like from that perspective, from your perspectives?
I go back to just do the right thing. It's not about you. It's a we, not a me. Yes, it's a weird business when you think about how it ends up every year at the year-end discussion in terms of maybe more me when they tell you this is what you are, this is who you are to us, whether it's financially or from a position in the firm perspective. But to me, it's about the people you're around. Now, I never knew these people here. Okay, I've been here about a year and 2 months. We did something last week. We raised there were $3 billion for a bunch of companies last week. I went upstairs next morning. I high-fived everybody in the capital markets board. I am so blessed to be around such great people. There's nothing wrong with showing people your enthusiasm for their hard work, beginning, during, and at the end. I always find that it's more fun. And then similarly with clients or deal teams, when things die, like you're working on something forever and it just blows up or dies, get a little huddle, grab a sandwich, go get a pop together and talk about it, because you put your whole life into it, like for a period of time. So do that. And then more importantly, when a client has a problem, call them. Tell them you're thinking about them. People only like to chase success. It's like I said, it's a 10-year arc. You don't know what's going to happen. And more importantly, if you don't like these people, then why are you talking to them? Like, I love the people that I interact with. It's super fun.
Yeah.
But the one thing that you got to bookend the M word with the other M word, there's meritocracy and then there's mediocrity. And no one should tolerate mediocrity because we're all in high functioning environments. So you can't have situations where everyone isn't pulling the same towing the same line at the same time. It's really important.
As a young lead,
I should be held to the same standard.
Yeah, as a young leader who's maybe needs to look out for that in his team, any advice?
Just if you're dialing it in or phoning it, everybody knows the effort they're putting in. And if they're putting in a tremendous effort, you don't really have to tell people, they're going to notice it. If there are things where your teammates or your team around you may not be doing something, maybe there's something else going on in their lives. Maybe it's not because they're dragging their feet. So make sure you know these people. These are your peers. You're going to spend more time with them, with your friends, and with a lot of them become your friends, your family, your kids. And once people, that also helps the broader mental and physical health that I talked about earlier, just in terms of having this collaborative environment. So I think that's what I would do. Mediocrity, everybody knows what the word means. Some people tolerate it. Some organizations tolerate it. I think it's important that we all hold ourselves to a standard that you would want for yourself.
Yeah, good advice. I think as a leader, know your team definitely see it. So if you don't take care of it, then it's only going to go one way. But yeah, I like your take. What about, we haven't touched on mentorship. You did mention it a little while ago, but we didn't unpack it. So maybe just some insight there for those listening on both sides of it, right? Mentorship and sponsorship. Any advice on how to gain a great mentor and how to really get the sponsor that's going to help you to take that next level?
Some people want mentors that are more like friends to them. Some people want mentors that are more like teachers to them. I like something in between. So who's a safe pair of ears that I can talk to? I have one here now. I'm not going to tell you this, but someone much older than I. And I sought this person out on my own. I saw their history. I saw their success. I'm like, I just got to hear these stories. I got to learn. I got to understand when they were more patient or less patient in not their careers, but in their trajectory. But what I also like is someone who will be like, no, you're thinking about that all wrong. You don't want just a yes person in your life. You want somebody that can give you that same thing, but more safely. Remember, I talked about criticism at the end of the year feedback. No one talks about how they don't talk to you about all the great things you're doing. They tell you about the things that you need to work on, right? But you want somebody to say, no, but this is even safer. It's a safer environment where somebody can say that to you. And then maybe you can alter course and you check in with that person, not every week, once a quarter, once every other quarter. Grab a coffee, get out of the office if it's someone internally, like even if it's in the office in the cafeteria, or it's going to get a cup of coffee, get a dinner, avail yourself to them if they're going to avail themselves to you. In terms of being a mentor to others, I think it's important to say that I'm happy to be a mentor to somebody, but it's really important for someone closer to your level with which you're in to know specifically, are you on track? What is it that's doing well for you or less well? And again, that has to be a safe environment. You can't be held accountable to anything you talk about in the environment, because then people are going to seek out mentors. It's really important to have a safe pair of hands to talk to. So that's how I do it. That's how I hope others will do it. And it's not meant to get ahead. It's not meant to don't seek out somebody that, oh, they're really senior and they hang out with me, so that means I'm going to get this next role. That is not the way to seek a mentor. The mentor is like, how do you do it with others? And the other thing I would just say is, a lot of people, when you think through this whole cycle of career development, you're probably going to go there, is their next job. Analysts think about their next job within 3 months on the job. No, it's not a good way. It's not a good way to start your career. You're doing it because everyone else is doing it. I get the pressure, but if you literally just focus on what you're doing, you'll be fine. And then associates view it more as a career. Analysts view it as a career, but maybe a stepping stone as well. I just think some of those philosophies and the way you frame your mind getting into a job is better than, think about how fast am I leaving before I even start.
Seems to get quicker and quicker these days, the expectations.
I think it's a disservice. It's a disservice to sophomores in college to figure out what they want to do junior summer. It's just, I can't control it, but I can get my views.
Yeah, for sure. No, definitely. Again, back to that purpose we talked about, finding someone that you can share that confidential space with, hold accountability, someone close to your role, as you mentioned, that can help you in the phase of your career you're in. So yeah, lots of great advice. Believe it or not, we're moving towards the end of the episode. It's flown by. A few more questions left, and then I'm going to let you get back to it. I know you've got a busy day ahead. Looking back on your 28-year plus journey, Philip, what are you most proud of and why?
I think for me, it's been, from a professional level, I find it's amazing to have gotten to know so many brilliant people in the world. And that goes with where you've worked and the folks that are outside of your four walls of your organization and the client stuff. I think to be surrounded by people that actually really care, especially in my sector, they are taking on, I think, literally mission impossible. right? When you think about it, everything is stacked up against them. You're developing drugs, you're trying, and remember, every year the standard of care gets higher and higher as new developments happen, which is great. You got to raise the bar and raising capital and thinking through the wow, their job is so hard. Our job's hard too. But to be around these people and learn from them and help assist them and like the most rewarding feeling is when you see success for some of these companies. And equally as rewarding is when you see things may not go as well and how they dealt with it, how they pivoted, and how I learned from that. Like that to me has been the best part. During my journey, I had a child who was very ill. This community stood up for me and my family. I just made a few calls. How can I help? Who do I know? What? That was incredible. It blew me away, and it was really impressive. So I'd say over 20-year journey, relationships is where it's at. I love people. I love interacting with people. There are always going to be people that love you and people that love you less. But those interactions form the fabric of your being. And yes, you're an investment banker. I get it. But the conduit of that profession into meeting all these amazing people, like how blessed am I? How privileged am I? I didn't go to medical school to figure this one out, but it just happened this way. And I would just say it's all about your relationships and what you want from them and what it means to you as a person. So to me, that's the most rewarding thing. Not what I look back, I don't remember the exact day I got promoted to MD. I think I remember the year. Like it was really important at the time, but that's not the impact of your profession. It's the people you're around.
I love it. I love it. It's I can feel your passion. It's inspiring. And if everyone leaned into that sort of thinking, that relationship mindset, that growth mindset, we'd be in a much better place. On the flip side, outside of the relationships, what books, podcasts, materials do you recommend to our listeners that have had an impact on you?
It's interesting. We go back to the days that I got Wall Street Journal and Barron's and paper copy because I remember being obsessed with Al Abelson's column in Barron's. I don't really use that kind of media. I like to sit down and grab a coffee with a client and say, tell me about your life. Like I said about an internal mentor, I think it's just as impactful as meeting people versus listening to people, podcasts or write books. I love Duckworth's book, Grit. I thought it was a great book. That's not that long ago, right? That was just a great book. But it wasn't as if it just talks about drive and determination across various verticals. But this is not, again, I didn't grow up in the media world where you can do everything on this. So I chose to just go out and meet people and learn from their experiences and see what I could take in. So a little less than an answer that you wanted, I think.
No, the network's key, right? And we just talked about that. So final question, Philip, before I let you get back to it. If you could go back now and give advice to your younger self, standing at that crossroads between medicine and finance, what would you say?
I never practiced medicine, that is. And I think about it. I still think about it every day. But I don't think I don't have any regrets. I think the word is just be patient. I tell this to my own kids. I tell this to my nieces and nephews, people that want to ask me for their kids, because I'm at an age now where a lot of the kids are kids, even though they're older and 23. They introduce me to their kids about what's the best thing about. I think it's about being patient. You're going to work for the rest of your life. I'm a big believer in graduate education. I really believe that you can learn. It's not about the next step in your career. It's about what you can learn, the network you can provide. Because at the beginning of this, we discussed, I didn't have a network when I got into this. I didn't know anybody. I knew people in the medical community. I didn't know anybody in the banking community. So I think it's really important to be patient and just think about reflecting on yourself and what you want to do and grow as an individual. And a job's always going to be there. So I think I didn't have my first job until I was like 28 years old. Okay, 27. So just be patient. It's not about the next little step. It's about the end game. And the end game for you is what makes you happy. And everybody gets happy from different things. But the highs and lows of winning and losing deals is not going to be long-term happiness. Just not. Long-term happiness would be everything I described for me. Like the reason I left medicine, because the advancements in medicine were not anywhere near where they are today. And I got to see it all happen and play out from this seat. I'm privileged. So how you think about that as an individual is completely different than probably how I think about it. So that would be my biggest advice. Patience is really important. Life is long. The end game is long. Enjoy it. It may not be perfect, but if you look back over time, I bet you'll say it's been great.
What a great way to end the episode and great piece of advice, right? Be patient, reflect, get that purpose right, and the rest are going to take care of itself. It's a marathon.
Just do what makes you happy. Doesn't mean it doesn't require hard work, but do what makes you happy.
Yeah, it's always hard work involved.
Of course.
Powerful story. Thanks for sharing your journey, Philip, and all the advice. I know our listeners are going to get a ton to take away from this episode. So keep doing what you're doing. It's impressive. And thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for the privilege and the opportunity to hang out with you.
This episode of the podcast was brought to you by the Investment Banking Leaders Club. And to keep leveling up your career, join the club at ibleadersclub.com for exclusive insights, leadership strategies, and career growth resources straight from the industry's top professionals. I want to say thanks to our key partner, Outram, the global leader in financial deal gifts, awards, and recognition, for their ongoing support of our mission to empower both aspiring and senior investment banking leaders. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks for tuning in. And until next time, best of luck on your growth journey.